Hello everyone, this is Will from Singletrack magazine. Welcome via Facebook Live. Welcome again. We were here yesterday in the Singletrack Tower's secret workshop. We're back again with another UK First Ride exclusive. We have a brand new full suspension bike here from Cannondale. It is, ta-da, the new Trigger. This is a bike that we have been testing over the last week. Now, it's just been officially released today, as of right now, really. And if you get onto our website, which is singletrackworld.com, you will see a first look article and also our first review of this new full suspension bike. So we figured we'd take the opportunity while we had this bike here to show you through some of the details of it, because there's some clever stuff going on, but also it's very different to the old Cannondale Trigger. I shouldn't say old because it's not that old. The Trigger first came out in 2014 for the 2015 model year, so it's only been around for a couple of years. But this here, the new version, is a complete wholesale redesign. So first and foremost, you can probably tell, well, let's go through the basic specs. This is a full suspension, long travel trail bike, so it's 27.5 inch wheels. It's using up to 145 millimeters of travel on the back, and it's got 150mm travel on the front for the Fox 34 fork. So it's a long travel trail bike. The geometry has been pushed longer and slacker, as is the current trend to do so. Nice short chainstays. In fact, I'll give you the specific numbers. The chainstay length this here is 420mm, so very, very short. I'll go through later how Cannondale has achieved that. Head angle is 66 degrees, so it's been pushed out a little bit further. And as you can probably tell, I mean, this bike is quite large relative to me. I am a normal height for a human being, but this is an extra large, hence why the saddle nearly comes up to my armpit there. So yeah, so this is the Trigger 2. Cannondale will be doing the Trigger in 3 different models: Trigger 1, Trigger 2, Trigger 3. Trigger 1 is the high-end model, and this one here is the middle spec option of the range. Carbon fibre front triangle, and it's using an alloy rear end. Once you go to the top-end Trigger 1, you'll get a full carbon back end for maximum bling factor. All of that aside, let's talk about the suspension, because that's where this bike gets really interesting. So gone is the pull shock of old. So the previous Trigger had the shock mounted down here just forward of the seat tube, and it was actually a pull shock design, so it would extend the rear shock. It was a proprietary design built by Fox called the Dyad, shared on the Jekyll and the Trigger models. However, that's gone. It's gone in favour of a more simplistic or a more conventional push shock. So Cannondale's kind of flipped the orientation around, so the shock's not here anymore, it's up here, and so the rocker link actually compresses the rear shock in a conventional manner. This distance here, the eye-to-eye length and the stroke of the shock, it's all normal. It's not special. So if you blow up the shock, or if you don't want to run this shock, you can bolt in anything on there. However, this is where things get interesting. So it's a Float X rear shock. Now, otherwise standard from top to bottom, except for this is where it gets interesting. This is the Gemini technology. Now, this is a Cannondale dreamed up technology that Fox then implemented, engineered and manufactured into the shock. Essentially what Gemini does is, I'm going to pull this little guy here. See that little cam? There's a cable that extends from the handlebar down to the rear shock, and it gives you 2 positions. Now, traditionally what that sort of feature would give you is a lockout, you know, on and off type thing. Lock out the shock, unlock the shock. This isn't one of those. What this does is much more clever. In the open mode, which is called flow, you get 145mm of rear travel, and the shock behaves exactly like a regular Float X shock. It's got the same volume, it's got the same Evol air can, same damping, yada yada. It's exactly the same. Hit that lever, adjust the cam, and a piston closes off the positive edge, or a portion of the positive air chamber. The portion it closes off is quite a lot. So essentially what it does is it restricts the volume of the positive air spring, and all of a sudden you have a very, very progressive, very, very rampy spring curve. It's so rampy that it actually limits the travel to 115mm. Now that mode's called hustle. conveniently. The hustle mode is basically designed to get you to the top of the hill as quickly as possible. So you hit that button, restricts the volume in the positive air chamber, shrinks it down, makes it really poppy. The rear shock still works in that mode, so you can still get 115mm travel. It's still sensitive to begin with, but it ramps up really quickly, so it gives it a really poppy and sprightly kind of feel. So the suspension still works. It just limits the travel, puts you a little bit higher up for climbing, and gives you a bit more efficiency as well. So really clever design. As soon as you get to the top of the hill, hit that lever, open it into the flow mode, and you've got 145mm smooth travel to enjoy all the way down. So overall, it's a really clever design. Barney's been testing this. He is the only human tall enough to ride this XL machine, and he really digs it. So make sure you jump on singletrackworld.com to get the full review. So let's have a look at some of the features. So you've got internal cable routing here, running through the frame. So this runs through this huge down tube, classic big Cannondale down tube. There's a nice kink here at the bottom. You can see there's a carbon shield underneath the down tube. That's to protect it from rock strikes from the front wheel and so on. That kink in the down tube is there so you can fit a water bottle inside the main triangle, which was impossible with the previous design and impossible with a lot of other bikes as well. So two little bolts here that allow you to put a cage, a side mount cage, so you still need something you can slide the bottle in from the side, either right or left, but you can fit a bottle in here, which is great for a lot of riders who don't always want to ride with a backpack. Now all of the trigger models and the new Jekyll as well. Sorry, I should have thrown that in there. Cannondale's releasing a new Jekyll too as of right now, which is a longer travel version. So we're taking you through the trigger because that's the one we've been riding, but fundamental design is very similar between the two. All the trigger and Jekyll models are 1x, so you've got a nice wide range SRAM XO1 Eagle group set here. Huge 10 to 50 cassette on there for lots of climbing traction. However, Cannondale have given you the ability to run a front derailleur. So there's two little bolts there on the swing arm. So if you're really in love with your front derailleur, then you can bolt on one onto the front there as you so choose. Now I was talking before about how short this back end is. So it's 420mm. So for a bike with nearly 6 inches of travel, that is quite short. Now, how Cannondale has done this is really interesting. So at the moment, boost drivetrains are kind of all the rage. 148mm rear hub and a drivetrain that comes away from the frame by 3mm. Cannondale said, no. Let's go one step further. So they've taken the drivetrain and they've offset it 6mm. So it's still a 148mm boost hub on the back, but the whole drivetrain comes away from the frame 6mm. What that allows the engineers to do is slam that rear tyre right up against the bottom bracket of the frame, get more tyre clearance in there because there's more clearance around the chain rings and so on, yada, yada, yada. So that allows them to get that really short back end. Here's where it gets clever though, because the cassette and the hub come away from the center line by 6mm, then the rim itself, to keep the wheel straight, is then dished back 6mm the other way to keep it in the center of the axle at the back, so to keep the front and rear wheels running in the same plane. So that offset actually allows for a more even kind of spoke bracing angle for the rear wheel. So not only by offsetting the drivetrain by that much can you get the short chain stays, you can also get a more balanced spoke tensions in the rear wheel, and in theory a stronger rear wheel that's less likely to go out of true. So really clever design. They call it asymmetric integration, and it's been featured on a number of other Cannondale models like the FSI, the Habit, and also the Scalpel as well. So that's been implemented in the new Trigger and Jekyll models. So it's still a 148x12 boost rear hub, so you can still run any 148x12 hub in the back that you want. However, you will have to re-dish the rear wheel to then bring it back over because of that extra offset. So so that's a bit of technical details there that allow Cannondale to get that nice short back end. What else have we got here? We've got a very UK-friendly part spec. So Cannondale's actually been taking on board some of that feedback from British mountain bikers. So it's got proper rubber on here. There's Maxxis Minion DHF on the front, got a DHR on the back. Both of these use the Max Terra 3-seat compound. They're tubeless ready, EXO sidewalls, so nice and tough. 29mm internal WTB frequency rims. These are tubeless compatible, nice wide rims, proper grippy tubeless tyres. tyres. Obviously the 1x12 drivetrain on here, good solid SRAM guide brakes with big rotors. And we also have a nice wide bar and a short stem. So these are Cannondale items. I've got a carbon fibre, I think this is 780mm wide. We've probably got a measuring tape somewhere, but anyway. 780mm wide handlebar, 45mm stem. It's basically, it's how a lot of British mountain bikers would kind of spec out their bikes anyway. So nice to see Cannondale kind of taking on board some of that feedback and delivering a complete package, which is kind of what riders are looking for. We'll give you another quick look over here on the handlebar. So here we've got, this is the Fox remote, and this is what allows you to access those 2 travel modes. So open at the moment is flow, and that's 145mm rear travel. Flick that silver lever and you're in hustle mode, and that's 115mm travel, that's your climbing mode. So at the flick of a switch, in essence, you've got 2 bikes in one. That is the whole concept with the Gemini technology, with the trigger and the Jekyll. So taking on board what they were doing with the Fox Diad shock on the previous trigger, but simplifying things without the pull shock design, more conventional push shock to deliver basically that same 2 bikes in one theory. So yeah, so that's kind of a bit of a first look at the Trigger 2. Now, I'm sure there's probably questions coming through about price, and if you're watching this via Facebook Live, we're, just to fill you in, we're giving a UK first look exclusive at the Cannondale Trigger, the brand new 2018, I know we've only just clocked over 2017, but anyway, 2018 Cannondale Trigger. So if you've got any questions, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. So, prices, let's just quickly go through these. Trigger 1 is the top of the range, that's £5,999. This is the Trigger 2. This will set you back $5,499, and the entry-level Trigger 3 will set you back $3,999. The Trigger 3, I should say, still features Fox suspension front and rear, still features a 1x drivetrain, still features a carbon front triangle and the alloy rear, carbon swing link as well, same Gemini shock technology. But does come in a fair bit cheaper if, at $3,999. All of the triggers are available from mid-April to early May, so not too far away. In fact, the Trigger 1 is due in mid-April, so pretty close. Complete weight for this bike with mud on the tyres, because it has been ridden. We've obviously been testing this. This is an extra large, so it is huge. It's going to weigh more than a medium or a small. 13.66 kilograms. Out of the box, as you see here, for the Trigger 2. Yeah, and in terms of sizes, there are 4. So you can have a small, medium, large, or extra large in the Trigger 2, and 3 in Trigger 1 as well. Any questions coming through?
We're getting comments about lefty.
No lefty. This is a really good point that you bring up, anonymous person.
That was Derek.
Derek, excellent question. So, 2 things with the previous trigger that Cannondale identified. The lefty, great performing fork, kind of polarizing on looks, and for some people, a little bit of an unknown quantity, particularly from a service perspective. So most Cannondale dealers can service lefty forks, that's not really a problem, but not every shop is confident in servicing them. So for Cannondale, the lefty fork was a potential barrier for some customers to get onto the trigger or onto the Jekyll. So you will not find lefty forks on either the trigger or the Jekyll. So they're kind of done in that longer travel format as we know them at the moment. And that's also why they've gone for the conventional push shock. So no more pull shock on there. As much as Cannondale believed in the technology and it worked, again, more complex and less likely to find a local bike shop that can service it. So the whole idea with going to the conventional Fox shock and conventional Fox forks on the front was to offer up similar performance, but with greater simplicity and ease of service, and removing any of those potential barriers that might have been in place for some consumers. So good question, Derek. Anything else coming through?
I just got a question about what the hubs are.
The hubs are from SRAM, so the wheels are different on the Trigger 1, 2 and 3. This is the Trigger 2, so it's the mid-level of the range. These are SRAM 900 hubs. You probably want to have a listen to them. They're very quiet, subtle, I think. It's got a nice kick to it. That is, what you're listening to there is a 4-pole engagement system. It's about 52 engagement points from those 4 poles, so nice and buzzy. They're kind of understated, but in our experience, they work really well. So there's a SRAM 900 hub on the back and on the front as well. So there's a logo. There you go. Just to prove that we're not telling fibs.
Yeah. And we just had some people who are coming late to the party wondering why there's so much space down inside the frame.
Oh, okay, yes, of course. So this is a Facebook Live video, so sorry, we have been streaming since 3 o'clock, since this bike was officially launched to the world. So what you've got here is basically room for a bottle, water bottle. So I don't know about you, but I don't carry a backpack with me on every single ride that I go on. In fact, most of my rides are sort of under 2 hours where I don't need a camelback. And so Cannondale kind of brought that into the design brief, that having access to a water bottle on your frame is actually a really useful thing for a lot of riders. So there's 2 little silver bolts down there. That's where your water bottle cage mounts, so just underneath the dropper cable there. And you would use a side entry bottle, so you go from the right or from the left. It'll fit a 600ml bottle, so not a full-size 750. A 600ml bottle is the biggest you can get in there. However, I mean, that's kind of ideal for those sort of shorter rides without having to resort to a backpack. So that's what they've done there, yeah. And I guess the space has been achieved, as we were saying before, because that shock placement has now flipped and has gone up to the top here, rather than being down there where you would normally sort of mount a bottle. So, yeah, there we go.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of any other details on there. We've obviously got the carbon fibre swing link here. There's some clever kind of pivot hardware that Cannondale's using. It's also shared with some GT full suspension bikes. It's called Locker. Basically, it's an expanding collet system. So the axle has splits in it, and a beveled edge, and as you tighten it, it expands inside the frame and locks it really tightly in there. So you end up with a stiffer junction and also less chance for any wiggle or play to develop over time. So quite neat. So yeah, there you go.
27.5 and or 29er?
Yeah, so 27.5 only. We will just have to wait and see if there will be any bigger wheel options. Now, the existing or former trigger, if we shall say, refer to it, was available in both 27.5 and 29-inch versions. So I wouldn't say it would be too far for a stretch from the imagination to see a bigger wheel version of this trigger at some point in the future. As to when that'll be, who knows? I'm sure if we were ever told, we'd probably have to swallow a cyanide pill or something. So yeah, 27.5 only for the time being, but excellent question. Cool.
Right, I think that's about everything covered.
All right, well, there we go. That's the 2018 Cannondale Trigger 2. Exclusive UK first look. We have one in the building. Now, if you do want to read the full review, Barney has jumped on board. He's been riding this ragged the past few days. So jump on singletrackworld.com and check out Barney's review of the 2018 Cannondale Trigger 2. We also have a first look article up there with lots of pretty photos, detailed photos, and a much more comprehensive explanation of what I've just gone through. And but otherwise, by all means, let us know what your questions are, and we shall do our best to answer them for you. Thank you, everyone. Tooroo.